Well, welcome everybody. My name is Steve Upton. I'm the president of CHROMiX and lead developer of a number of different things that we do. Today's webinar is about Curve4 and Maxwell 22. This is intended as a quick run through of what the new capabilities are, but it's intended to talk about how these two products and services work together. Curve4 has been available for quite some time now, I think 2016 or 2017. Curve has become sort of the de facto G7 calibration and verification tool worldwide. It's been very popular. We've had lots of great feedback about it, about how much people like to use it, how they like the visual interface, they like to be able to measure directly into it. We've also received great feedback from our users with suggestions about how to make it better. We really do appreciate that. Anything we can do to make things smoother and reduce the number of clicks you have to go through. Sometimes color management and calibration can be what I call death by 1,000 clicks. So we try to avoid that, and we welcome that kind of feedback. The idea behind Curve and ColorThink, for that matter, is they're both hand tools. The idea is they're available on your machines wherever you are, whenever you are. You don't have to be online. You can just use them, in a press room or on an airplane or wherever you might need to use them. That's the idea behind Curve4. What we're adding today does not detract or change that. Maxwell's been around for quite some time. We announced it in late 2006, early 2007. We got our first big customer in 2008. And we've had over 350 million measurements in the system over the last 14 years. The new interface, we basically spent the last several years, in fact, the pandemic contributed to us being able to spend more time on it and really rebuild the interface to simplify it, make it smoother, easier to use, and actually more powerful at the same time, which is a bit of a challenge because it's not uncommon when we make things more powerful to make them more complicated and more annoying. So we're working on avoiding that. It's great for tracking and trending and sharing information and for getting notifications about when things go wrong, when measurements arrive, that sort of stuff. So it seems like Curve4 and Maxwell could go well together. They're quite complementary. We're only willing to do it if it doesn't take anything away from what Curve4 can do. That's very important. The idea here isn't to modify Curve4. It's not to turn it into some online tool, that sort of thing. It's a hand tool. It does its job well. People like it and use it. We didn't want to change that. So what is new? Well, the new thing is that Maxwell's trending and remote monitoring capabilities will be provided to all Curve4 users via Maxwell 2022, or 22, we're calling it. Verify and calibrate documents from Curve will automatically upload into Maxwell and be processed for trending and for notifications. Licensed users simply sign up for a free account. The idea is that it's very straightforward, it's very simple, and very easy. It's almost a zero configuration situation. So this is basically included with Curve4. If you own Curve4, you will have this ability. If you buy Curve4, verify, even just the verify level, or calibrate or complete levels with the different functions, it will be included with it. The idea is, again, to make it powerful and simple, and now Curve4 has this ability to do tracking and trending and all that sort of thing. So how does it work? Well, I can write this in a single slide because it really is this simple. In Maxwell, there's a couple things to do. In Curve, there's a couple things to do, and that's it. So the simplest thing to do there is to show you. So the first thing is to sign in to Maxwell. It's easy to set up a free account in Maxwell. I'm going to sign in using a test username that we use that we call Dale Maxwell. More detail, a bunch more detail about Maxwell will be available in the following webinar. But in the meantime, you come into Maxwell and you can go into the Dash tab and see different components of the dashboard capability of it. You can go to the Equipment tab, and that's where we'll start right now. Basically, it's just a matter of making a new location. Now, in this demo account, we have a number of locations, but to make a new one in a new account, you just click the plus button and you enter in some straightforward information about it. If you put your zip code in, then certain benefits will happen. If you have your latitude and longitude, you put that in. If you're in a non-North American location, Maxwell automatically starts pulling weather information real time into the system based on each location. It associates that with the devices that you put in every location. And so right now it's pulling in information about Chicago's current weather, London's current weather, including a 4 or 5 day forecast, trend expected for humidity and whatnot. This is just stuff that's going on the weather in the environment itself. Of course, we can add sensors and do a bunch of different things, but that's the higher level of Maxwell stuff. For our purposes, you just create a location, like for instance, Portland, and then you create a new press. And it's easy to create a press. You just click the plus button here and you say new press number 2. It doesn't really matter what it is. And let's see, you bought a fancy new one from Screen. Got one of these new 520s. You can put notes and whatnot in it. You can also specifically put it in a location. It's important to put it in a location, right? Then you say create. That's all there is to it. If the brand or the model doesn't exist for your particular press, you can add them here just using the plus buttons, okay? So I'll say create, and it will create that new press here, and that's it. That is the extent of the Maxwell setup that's required. A new account, which is easy to do, simple like most systems, a new location, and a new press, okay? I'm gonna hide Chrome for the moment. And then I'm going to go into Curve. So those of you who use Curve will be probably familiar with this particular interface. All I need to do is go into the preferences of Curve and say connect in the Maxwell area, okay? So I'm going to connect as our same test user that we use a lot, good old Dale. And that will authenticate and lock it in and save it so everything's ready to go. Then the next thing you do is go into the references area. And this is where you can set up different settings for the different levels of G7 testing that you want to do and calibration that you want to do, especially the testing side of it. So I can create any new reference here, or I can go into any one that's already in here. Let's go into number 2. And there's a new field here in the pop-up at the bottom, and I just select the press that I wanted. There's new press number 2. Okay. That's it for the setup. Literally, that is it for the setup. I'll rename that just so we're clear. Okay, so I'll call this production test press number 2 or whatever I want to do. This is not going to be the only way that you can connect things, but this is the simplest way to do it. And so if you have set up Curve for a customer, for instance, or a less experienced user, you can set up some references here and associate Maxwell presses with them, and then it's off to the races. If you have a single reference you want to use it for multiple presses, you can simply duplicate it here in Curve and then associate a different press with it. But that's the setup. So when I create a new verification, like I might do, and I choose a reference, if I choose that particular reference, then the verification will automatically be sent up to Maxwell. Whenever I add measurements and whatnot and I update it, it's automatically sent up to Maxwell in the background. And that's all there is to it. So the users don't really see anything. You don't have to see or worry about anything. There does need to be a connection to the internet. It will store it for uploading later. So there's no problem if you're not connected at the time. But in order for the upload to occur, Curve will need to be running while it can see Maxwell. So it will not affect your on-site work. Lots of our users run around with Curve on laptops, and do mobile verifications and calibrations and whatnot. And this will not affect that in any way. The next time it can see the internet, it'll upload all that information. That's all there is to it. There's not that much to show you here because it is that simple. Now, if I go to the Calibrate tool, it's a bit different. I'll make a new calibration, and in the setup area, down here at the bottom, there's a Maxwell press / printer. And I can select a press here as well. So I could select the new press that I created. Okay. And then this calibration will be associated with that press for the life of it. So calibration tends to be a different kind of document where you do multiple runs, you enter into at different times, you measure into it, that sort of thing. Curve knows to upload updates into the same location in Maxwell, and I'll explain that in a little bit of how that works. Once you set up a calibration for a press, you associate it here, and you're off to the races. That really is all there is to do in Curve. Curve's functionality doesn't change, as I mentioned. And there's not that much more to show you with Curve right now. So we're finalizing the user interface before we go beta. There'll be little markers beside the calibrations and the verifications that go up. So you'll know which ones are being sent up into Maxwell. There'll be a little marker in the list. So there's a few little user interface things that we're finalizing before we go into beta testing. And then up here in the right corner, it's been this way before, there's the little Maxwell logo in the window. And so when activity is happening with Maxwell, when it's copying things up, that'll flash as well. You'll be able to see when activity occurs. So that's the Curve side of it. The Maxwell side of it, as I mentioned, is fairly straightforward. And I have several presses that we've been dealing with for testing for this purpose. Now, verifications and calibrations are really kind of different functions. When verifications come up into Maxwell, they will automatically create a track for the device that they're associated with. And a track looks like this here. These are separate tracks. And I can look at the data that's been fed up into the tracks. You can see the new interface in Maxwell is quite dynamic. And I can run back and forth, change the amount of magnification, change the metrics that are being graphed if you choose to see a different kind of metric that's showing up there. But the idea here is when you make a verification, it will automatically create a new track for you. And it will automatically set up everything that the track needs. So because the Curve file is coming up into Maxwell, it will automatically create all of those settings within Maxwell, and you will not need to handle that in any way. Now, when it comes to a particular device, Maxwell has a notification capability. There's a little bell here in the bottom corner when you're looking at a device, and I can open it up and I can create a notifier. So I could say press verification fail or something. And then I can choose different kinds of triggers that would cause this notifier to fire. In this particular case, it would be, tolerance failure in a track or job. And then I say create. That's all there is to that. The notifiers, you can come in and edit them later on, but now it will automatically email me when a verification fails. I can add additional email addresses to it if there are people outside the system that we want to get notifications. It's easy to set up free accounts in Maxwell, and we never charge by the account. We don't charge by the seat. So if you have 8 people who want to be able to access the information and make their own notifiers and do that sort of thing, they just need to set up their accounts, and then you link it in, or we'll help you link it in so they all have access to the same data. And again, you're off to the races. So the notification side of it's very easy to set up. So verifications come up and they just spit data into here. Now, as I look at this particular device, I can see things like the latest measurements. This is the metrics for this particular device. It doesn't have the G7 stuff for this one at the moment. I'll show you one in just a second. But you can also see the patches for the target that was measured, the A-B graph, that sort of thing. You can easily move around this sort of thing. This is the same kind of data that's available in Curve. It's a slightly different view, and that's on purpose, but you can also link to that particular device's environmental information as far as the external temperatures and whatnot. Now, if you're using a higher level of Maxwell, this is where you could bring other sensor information in and see if it might be relating to the weather. You can see here in Portland, and this is a real forecast for this week. They're going to go from 38 degrees, overnight up to 58, 60 degrees a little later on in the week, and the humidity will kind of be all over the place. That can affect how your facility works. You can keep an eye on that when you have that kind of higher level of Maxwell capability. So under the equipment tab, the idea here is that you can see the different locations, you can see your different presses and instruments, and track things in that manner. We've also added in Maxwell 22 a jobs function. Jobs are very similar to tracks, really similar things. In fact, I call tracks persistent jobs. But the idea behind a job is, in many ways, it can correspond directly to production jobs that you might do in your environment. The production jobs are available in the higher level of Maxwell licensing. The curve level of Maxwell licensing, what happens is when you do calibrations, this is where they go. So a verification, if you recall in the equipment tab, a verification sort of an ongoing, keep an eye on it function. So it's a great fit for a track in Maxwell. You do a verification in Curve, it uploads, tracks are created, and it automatically tracks and trends what's going on for that device and that color behavior. Calibrations aren't a long-term ongoing thing. They're sort of a project thing, right? If I do a calibration and I associate it with the press, it automatically creates a different kind of job, a technical job in this case, instead of a production job. And it could be a verification side of it or a calibration side of it. But it's the same sort of idea. Now, Maxwell understands how to harvest data from Curve documents. So the actual Curve document itself is uploaded. Let's see if one is uploaded and fully populated the way I'm hoping it will. Let's see. No, unfortunately, they're not fully populating, and I apologize. Again, we're close to beta. We're finalizing these things. But these are the same G7 grayscale tests, targeted tests, and color space tests that you see the results of in Curve. Here they are available in Maxwell. Again, you'll see this information in the equipment side when verifications come up, as well as in the job side when calibrations come up. It also gives you measurement condition information, these additional channel things and A/B graphs and that sort of stuff. So this type of information is available for you in Maxwell. But the main thing I was saying here is that calibrations, when they're uploaded into Maxwell, automatically create their own jobs. So a calibration session, the sort of thing that can last over several days if you're doing a verification run, or you can reopen it in Curve and take measurements later on. They will be created as jobs. You can close them, you can find them later on, that sort of thing. But that's how they populate into Maxwell. And as I was saying, Maxwell understands the contents of Curve documents. So we upload the entire document, a Calibrate C4 document or a Verify C4 document in the case of verifications, and Maxwell can digest that information, can create tracks as necessary or jobs, or discover that an upload of a calibration is in fact an update to the previous calibration upload that was done. And so it loads it into the same area, and you can find that information when you're in here. That's how it's brought into Maxwell. You'll notice I haven't done any setting up in Maxwell other than the initial several pieces, and Maxwell was automatically configured. And this is a straightforward level of service that it's being offered, and it doesn't require a whole bunch of setup. The idea is to make it so that Curve has this additional ability, and it's not difficult to do. Let's jump back into the slide area. So the question is, how will Maxwell change your life? The idea really about a system like Maxwell, especially Maxwell, is it gives you confidence. This little guy has a lot of confidence. The idea behind Maxwell is that it can extend confidence all the way across your organization. Anything from equipment being delivered, print product being designed, your sales group, your customers, your press room, and facility management, tech support, all of these different roles in your organization can gain valuable insight and confidence from the information that Maxwell provides. The idea here is really that everybody knows more about what's going on. The operators even really like Maxwell because they understand that their actions have direct effects, and that if there are problems, they'll be able to tell when the problems are things that they need to take care of or should have taken care of, or when they belong to someone else. So it makes the areas of responsibility a lot cleaner, that kind of idea. A bit of information about this Curve-Maxwell relationship. What's the cost? It's included. I avoid using the word free because Maxwell is actually quite a valuable system, and it's not generally free, but it is available for Curve users. Any Curve4 user at any point. So if you bought it 3, 4, 5 years ago, it still will be available to you. Okay. How are tracks and jobs created? Automatically when verifications are uploaded, and jobs when calibrations are uploaded. They're automatically configured in Maxwell based on the contents of the Curve file that was uploaded. So the configuration you did in Curve basically was pre-configuration for Maxwell. Are custom color aims in Curve handled? Not yet. We're working on it. For now, basically the color aims built into Curve4.5 when it ships will be supported. Can you verify multiple color behaviors for a single press? Absolutely. In Curve, you create different references, right? Create different references with different settings within them, and then Maxwell will understand that they need to be in their own track. So you can have multiple flavors, I guess you could say, being uploaded into Maxwell, and Maxwell will understand that the verifications are based on different settings, and so it'll automatically create tracks and separate them for you. So how does this compare to other software and services? Well, it's the most well-known and trusted G7 verification tool in Curve4. It's available offline as it is today for anybody to use wherever they are. And we know people going into press rooms, even in their own company, but especially in other companies, it's not easy to get online. So it's nice to be able to use the tool as you normally do. It retains the full reporting capability as it had. Then you add to that the online tracking and trending, the sharing capabilities, notifications, as many presses as you want. And the Verify tool is $399. There's nothing else quite like this. Can we share the data with others? The short answer, the easy one to put here, is yes. It joins with the next question. What about enterprise-wide and fleet management? Both of those are available, but they'll probably require a bit of help for us to set up initially. And that's no problem. We're happy to do that. You just let us know how you want the data organized, or maybe just who you want to have access to it, whether you want them to have read-only, that sort of thing. That user interface in Maxwell is being expanded, and you'll be able to administer it yourself. But in the short term, if you want it, you just tell us what you need, and we'll set it up for you. Can you upgrade to other Maxwell services? Absolutely. This level of service, the Curve4 level of service, is not intended as some poor stepchild kind of situation. It's a fully usable and useful trending system and tracking system. When you want more capabilities, when you want to be able to specify all of your own reference information in a much different way and more capable than what you can do in Curve, then you'll want to upgrade to Maxwell or Maxwell Plus level of services. If you want to automate measurements and route them based on barcodes on the targets, for instance, and you want extended troubleshooting and diagnostic capabilities and that sort of thing, you will upgrade, that sort of thing. But the ability of Curve to feed data into Maxwell doesn't go away, and there's no need for it to. The customers we've been speaking to about this new level of service with Curve4 really like the idea that it just completely augments what they're doing in Maxwell already. because they'll use Maxwell as an ongoing monitoring system, but they'll also use Curve for occasional verifications, and they like the idea that those just appear in Maxwell. They also use Curve for calibrations. They'll run around to their different facilities or have, G7 experts and professionals in their different facilities doing calibrations. And they like to be able to keep an eye on which presses have had their G7 calibration done recently, when it was done, how effectively it was done. That will all feed directly into Maxwell and gets along very well with any other extended Maxwell services that might be available. Is this a time-limited offer? No, it's not intended as some lesser thing, or it's a trial thing. It's not intended that way at all. The idea is it takes Curve, which is a great tool, adds this other functionality to it in a way that's really easy to do. And if you want to expand from there, you can, but you don't have to. When? Beta this month. Everything going well, by the end of this month, we'll be making the beta available. When it ships after that, it tends to be completely dependent on what we discover in beta. Everything going well, it should be able to ship reasonably soon after that. But a little bit of background here. Maxwell came into being before Curve did, but it had a different development path. Maxwell needed a client, a separate piece of software that could run even if the internet wasn't available and could drive hardware directly, i1 Pros and ISIS and Barbie Aries and Konica Minolta devices and that sort of thing. The Maxwell client evolved over time to do those sorts of things. Maxwell has a very flexible reference system. So when you set it up, you can set metrics and tolerances and do all sorts of stuff. All that information needs to come down into the client in order for real-time operator-facing verifications to be performed. So Maxwell Client grew those capabilities over time. Now you may have noticed Curve4 inherited some instrument capabilities. So Curve all of a sudden had all these capabilities to use all these different instruments. It inherited those from Maxwell. But under the hood, it also inherited Maxwell's powerful reference metric tolerancing capabilities. So Maxwell and Curve, they really do share a fair amount of that ability under the hood. Curve is designed to be a system that's kind of on rails. It guides you through the process. It does some straightforward things, but that underlying capability is in there. And that's part of the reason why when the Curve documents go up into Maxwell, the configurations that are stored within those documents already make sense to Maxwell because they came from Maxwell originally. Okay? But the other part of it that I wanted to mention is that the abilities that Curve inherits, like these new ones, this ability to upload files into Maxwell directly and double check that things go up, and also the ability to store files for upload later, which is what Curve will do when you make these changes to your documents, you create new verifications and you're offline. That capability came from the Maxwell client and has been tuned for use within Curve. But that also means that it has 10 to 15 years of field testing behind it already. That's why the measurement capabilities when they appeared in Curve were so mature, and why these other capabilities as they appear in Curve are also mature. So, short story long, what I'm saying is we don't expect strange things to show up in this upload and this interface process other than the new specific ones that we deal with Curve. So that is the extent of today's presentation. If you have questions about it, when you have questions about it, by all means, feel free to ask. If you have support questions, you can email us at support@chromix.com. If you have any sales questions, you can email us, at sales@chromix.com. Or of course, ask any of us directly if you'd like. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks for attending.